William Michael Stanwix was born in July 1945 in Johnson City, Tennessee. As an adult, he became a history teacher in Baltimore. In the mid-1990s, he married Larissa Montgomery, an immigrant from Kazakhstan who came through a mail-order arrangement. But the marriage unraveled quickly. Larissa accused him of behaving inappropriately toward her two daughters, ages 10 and 14. She filed for a protection order. William didn't deny the threats. He pleaded guilty and served 2 years in federal prison. When he got out, he was barred from contacting Larissa, her daughters, and their lawyer. The marriage was over. But his obsession wasn't. He blamed them for his prison sentence, for his humiliation, for the life he thought was stolen. He wrote letters, made calls, demanded Larissa be deported. No one listened. He began calling himself the victim, repeating it like a mantra, until the idea swallowed him whole. On February 2nd, 2001, just before noon, the anger reached a tipping point. At 55 years old, Stanwix got in his car and drove from Tennessee to Red Lion, Pennsylvania, to an elementary school his former stepdaughters had once attended. That morning, he tried to buy a gun. He failed the background check, but he wasn't leaving empty-handed. Instead, he took out a 2-foot tool with a sharpened blade. He stopped twice on the drive, just to hone the edge. He entered the school behind a parent. He also carried a baseball bat. In a hallway near the nurse's office and inside a kindergarten room, he swung at staff members and 11 young children. 3 women, the principal and 2 teachers, suffered cuts. 6 children were hurt. None of the injuries were life-threatening. What stopped him was Principal Norina Benzel. Despite her injuries, she tackled him and pinned him down. He later told prosecutors he chose that school because his stepdaughters had been there. He said he saw the building as a symbol of his failed marriage. He felt anger toward Larissa and her children. He may also have felt anger toward anyone connected to their new life in Pennsylvania. Police arrested him on the spot. He faced 39 charges. These included counts of trying to cause severe harm and carrying weapons on school grounds. Bail was set at $2 million. At his first court appearance, he told reporters, "I had nothing in my hand," even though he clearly carried the blade and the bat. Prosecutors pointed to his planning, 2 weapons and a sharpened blade, as proof he meant to do serious harm. His lawyers argued over some details, but most people in the courtroom felt little sympathy. At trial, the prosecution highlighted his past threats and prison time. They called him dangerous and urged the court to keep him locked up. The defense said he acted out of obsession, not a clear plan to harm. The jury did not agree. He was found guilty on all counts. In 2002, the judge gave him a prison term of 132 to 264 years. It was one of the longest sentences in York County history. His lawyers appealed, citing emotional distress, but the court denied relief. The judges said his careful planning outweighed any emotional reasons. In a 2010 letter from prison, he showed no remorse. He blamed his ex-wife, immigration officials, and members of Congress. He kept calling himself the victim. He did not express regret for what he did. Prison staff said he refused to cooperate and stayed focused on his complaints. On November 27, 2023, at age 78, Stanwix was found unresponsive in his cell at SCI Dallas in Pennsylvania. Staff later confirmed he had passed away. After 22 years behind bars, his life ended quietly. There was no public ceremony. What happens when a respected teacher's frustrations explode in a busy Miami workshop? Carl Robert Brown was born in Chicago in November 1930. He served in the U.S. Navy until 1954. Then he moved to Florida. He earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Miami in 1957. By 1964, he had a master's in education from East Carolina College. Brown began teaching history at Hialeah Junior High in 1962. Later, until about 1970, he taught accounting at Miami-Dade Community College. He married twice and had 3 children. His first wife passed away. His second marriage ended because he refused to get psychological help. His wife Sylvia said he looked gaunt and messy. Their daughter tried to have him admitted to a hospital, but he had to agree, and he wouldn't. At first, colleagues and neighbors saw him as a capable, friendly teacher. Over time, his behavior became erratic. In 1981, he was moved to Drew Middle School, which had mostly black students. Reports say he talked to students about private matters. In May 1977, he sent 3 girls to detention for not sitting down. Parents filed several complaints. In another case, he chased students with a stapler while sharing personal details. The school principal said the classroom was chaotic and that he had little control. In early 1982, psychiatrist Dr. Robert Wenger evaluated him. He noted severe anxiety, some paranoid and grand ideas, and a likely thinking disorder. He recommended therapy and medication, though he did not label Brown dangerous. On March 3, 1982, Brown was placed on medical leave. Doctors advised psychiatric treatment, which he mostly refused. On August 19, 1982, Brown argued with Sita at Bob Moore's welding and machine shop in Hialeah. He was upset about a $20 charge for fixing a lawnmower engine. Then his traveler's check was refused. Witnesses say he warned he would come back and harm everyone. They did not take him seriously. Just before 11 a.m., Brown returned on his bicycle. He wore a Panama hat and carried a pump shotgun. Inside the shop, he fired at point-blank range. He shouted he would send everybody to Germany. 8 people lost their lives. They included welders, managers, secretaries, and family members of the owner. 3 men were hurt, but escaped. After emptying his weapon, Brown left calmly on his bike. He headed toward Hialeah Junior High, a place he had mentioned to his son. Mark Cram, who worked nearby, chased him with a .38 revolver. Cram fired a warning shot that struck Brown in the back. About 6 blocks away, Brown was struck by a car and crashed into a concrete pole. He still carried 20 shotgun shells in his pockets. He passed soon after from those wounds. He never faced trial, leaving open the question of whether he planned a second incident at the school. Police suspected he did. Brown's motive seems tied to paranoia and grand religious delusions. At his home, police found a tape where he called himself Logos and claimed divine power over sounds in people's heads. He said he was indestructible on Earth. His notes show a fractured view of reality and an all-powerful self-image. The next teacher said she was divine. By the time anyone listened, it was too late. Dana Rivers is a transgender woman and former high school teacher. In 1999, she was still known as David Warfield. She taught at Center High School in Antelope, California. She was 45 years old when she told students she was transitioning. The district let her go after she spoke about her change. Rivers sued the school district. She settled for $150,000. After that, she spoke on Today and Good Morning America. She became a visible advocate for transgender rights. Rivers grew up near San Francisco. She was proud of her Navy service. She led field labor teams. She taught and coached teams. She liked structure and working with others. But her private life was hard. She had problems with drinking. She had rough family ties. She faced long-term mental health struggles. There is no sign she had a spouse or kids then. After her lawsuit, she moved to the Bay Area. She joined an all-women motorcycle club called the Deviants. She built her work around speaking out. She traveled to events across the country. She spoke about bias against trans people. Her story included service in the U.S. Navy for 3 years. She also coached baseball and worked as a rafting instructor. She had stopped drinking and gone through 3 marriages. She had a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. By the early 2000s, she was well known in trans communities. Then came November 11, 2016, Veterans Day. Rivers went to East Oakland. She visited her friend Charlotte Reed, age 56, and Reed's partner Patricia Wright, age 57. She knew them from the Deviants. Patricia's son, Benny Toto Diambu Wright, was 19. Prosecutors said Reed had left the club that year. Rivers felt hurt and left out. Reed had returned her club patches. Reports say Reed began to get threatening messages. That night, Reed and Rivers stayed late to fix Reed's RV. Text messages show Rivers said it would be a long night. Reed picked Rivers up at BART. Around midnight, neighbors heard gunfire. Benny came outside and then fell down. First responders arrived minutes later. They found Benny outside, bleeding and unconscious. Reed and Wright were found badly hurt inside the garage. Rivers came out of the garage covered in red. She smelled of gasoline. She wore Reed's helmet and leather vest. She held metal knuckles and sharp weapons. A fire was burning behind her. Officers recorded her saying, "There's a fire inside." She also said, "There are 2 people in there. They are not breathing." She added, "I know I'm in trouble." She asked for a lawyer and mentioned mental health services for veterans. In her bag, police found sharp weapons, ammunition, a screwdriver with red stains, brass knuckles, and Benny's iPod. Inside the garage, Reed had been shot twice. Then she got about 40 wounds from the sharp weapon, mostly to her head and face. Wright was shot in the back and chest. She also had many wounds. Benny was shot in the torso. He did not survive outside. Rivers set the fire to hide evidence. Rivers faced 3 counts of first-degree homicide, arson, and weapons charges. She pleaded not guilty at first. She then added a defense of mental illness. The jury did not accept that. They found her mentally fit and legally responsible.
On November 16, 2022, they ruled against her defense. A judge held a second hearing in January 2023. He agreed she was sane at the time. On June 14, 2023, Judge Scott Patton gave Rivers a life sentence with no chance of parole. The judge said it was the worst he had seen in 33 years. Rivers is now 70 years old. She will spend the rest of her life in prison. Her earlier work as a teacher and advocate is now overshadowed by this tragedy. Patricia Wright had worked as a sign language interpreter for Berkeley Unified. Charlotte Reed loved fixing RVs after she left the motorcycle club. Benny had just graduated from Berkeley High School. He hoped to train as a nurse or hairstylist. After the trial, Benny's uncle said Rivers chose to harm his family again and again. He said she used her anger over the club to carry out a personal revenge. He called it a calculated plan. Now what if the person they say is a monster was once a mother, a teacher, a survivor? Nancy Ann D'Onofrio was born in 1952 in Lincoln Park, Michigan. Her parents were Lenore and Eugene D'Onofrio. She did very well in school. She finished at the top of her class in high school. In 1972, she met Robert Bob Seaman. They married in 1973. Nancy stayed at home while Bob worked at Ford. They had 2 sons. Jeff was born in 1979. Greg was born in 1981. In 1995, Nancy began teaching 4th grade at Longacre Elementary in Farmington Hills. By 2004, her marriage was falling apart. She planned to leave. She even bought a condominium for Greg. Nancy said mistreatment began early in the marriage. She said Bob would push her against walls, squeeze her arms, or knock her down. She said this happened more often after he lost his job. Their sons remembered things differently. Greg said he saw physical mistreatment. Jeff said he never saw it. These different views shaped how people saw the case. On May 10, 2004, the day after Mother's Day, Nancy and Bob argued in their garage. She said they argued over her plans to leave. She said Bob chased her while holding a sharp kitchen object. She felt frightened. She grabbed a hatchet. She swung it many times. She said Bob did not survive the event. She said she only wanted to stop him. Prosecutors described a different sequence. They said Nancy bought the hatchet the day before at Home Depot. They said she returned it the next day to hide that purchase. They said she ambushed Bob in the kitchen. They said she then moved him to the garage. Video from the store showed her purchase and return of the hatchet. The body was struck many times with the hatchet. It was also pierced with a sharp weapon and hit by a blunt object. Nancy did not call the police at once. Instead, she went to school. She returned home at lunch. Then she bought cleaning supplies and bleach. She used them to scrub the garage. She told family and others that Bob had left to start a new life. 3 days later, his body was found in a tarp in her SUV. The SUV was parked in their driveway. Nancy pleaded not guilty. She said her actions were in self-defense, based on years of mistreatment. The prosecution said she planned the event ahead of time. Key evidence included the hatchet purchase and return, her runs to buy supplies, and her statements after the event. An expert on domestic mistreatment spoke for Nancy, but Michigan law limited how much the jury could hear about long-term harm at home. Nancy did have bruises and emotional pain. Still, the jury felt her actions went beyond self-defense. During the trial, her sons gave conflicting accounts. Greg supported Nancy's claim of mistreatment. Jeff did not. Prosecutors pointed to this difference to challenge Nancy's account. In November 2004, the jury found Nancy guilty of a first-degree charge, meaning they believed it was planned ahead. The judge gave her a life sentence. In August 2005, the judge lowered the finding to a second-degree charge. He said the proof of planning was weak. The prosecution appealed. In February 2007, the Michigan Court of Appeals restored the first-degree finding. Nancy asked for a review in federal court. She argued her lawyers had not fully built her defense about long-term mistreatment. In November 2010, a federal judge agreed. He ordered a new trial because of poor legal help, but in November 2012, the appeals court reversed that. It said Michigan law did not allow her argument as a full defense. After that, the first-degree finding and life sentence stood. Nancy Seaman is serving her sentence at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Michigan. By day, the next teacher taught science. By night, he trapped teenagers. But before we move on to the next case, consider liking and subscribing for more stories like this. Richard Lindwall was born in 1950 in Illinois. He grew up in a normal home. He chose a career in education. He became a science teacher at Glenbrook North High School in Northbrook, Illinois. Students liked him and saw him as a caring mentor. He also fostered children for the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. In the mid-1970s, that image fell apart. In 1975, he was linked to ending the life of 17-year-old Michael McDonald, the son of a Chicago police officer. Michael and a few friends were invited to Lindwall's house for what seemed like a casual get-together. Once there, Lindwall would not let them leave. He physically harmed them and forced inappropriate contact. Michael did not survive. Not long after, Lindwall led 2 other teens to his home and held them there against their will for several days. They were eventually set free. Their accounts were key to the investigation and helped lead to Lindwall's arrest. No one knows exactly what drove him. Some experts think his role as a trusted teacher let him control vulnerable students. Others believe he had deep personal problems that came out through these acts. His trial began in 1977 and drew a lot of attention. The survivors spoke about what they went through. Scientific evidence tied Lindwall to Michael's case. His lawyers argued he was mentally unwell at the time. The jury did not agree. After weeks of discussion, the jury found him guilty on several counts. These included intentionally ending a life, holding people hostage, and forcing inappropriate contact. The judge sentenced him to spend the rest of his life in prison with no chance of release. The planned nature and cruelty of his actions were central to that decision. He remains incarcerated in Illinois as of 2025, according to the Illinois Department of Corrections. Next began as a secret relationship but became a fatal obsession. Carla Hughes was born in 1981 in Greenville, Mississippi. When she was just 6 weeks old, her Uncle Carl and Aunt Linda adopted her. They raised her in a stable, middle-class home. Carla did well as a child. She was an honors student, competed in beauty pageants, and was also skilled in horseback riding. She later went on to graduate from the University of Southern Mississippi. After that, she earned a Master of Education from Belhaven College. At the time of her arrest, she was working toward a doctorate at Delta State University. In 2004, Carla had a son. She started teaching at an elementary school and eventually moved to Chastain Middle School in Jackson, Mississippi. There, she taught 7th grade language arts. While teaching at Chastain, Carla began a relationship with another teacher, Kehoe Pittman. He was also a basketball coach. But there was a major issue. Kehoe was already engaged to someone else, a woman named Avis Banks. He and Avis were expecting a child together. On the evening of November 29, 2006, something tragic happened. Avis Banks, who was 27 and pregnant, was found unresponsive in the garage of the home she shared with Pittman in Ridgeland, Mississippi. She had suffered both gunshot and sharp weapon wounds. The back door had been kicked in, which suggested someone broke in. Kehoe was the one who found her. After that, he called Carla Hughes. At first, police focused their questions on Pittman, but soon, evidence began pointing toward Carla. Her cousin came forward and said that Carla had borrowed a loaded .38 caliber revolver from him shortly before the incident. When she returned it, the gun was empty. Investigators also found Carla's shoes with red stains. The footprints at the scene matched those shoes. Cell phone records showed that Carla's phone was near the house around the time of the incident. So what led to all of this? According to prosecutors, Carla thought that if Avis was no longer in the picture, she could be with Pittman. They believed she wanted to remove the person standing in the way of their relationship. Carla's defense team pushed back. They claimed Pittman was involved and described him as someone who often dated multiple women at the same time. They argued that Pittman could have worn Carla's shoes to confuse investigators. They also said it was possible that the cell phone near the scene wasn't even hers. It might have belonged to someone else. Still, the evidence was strong. The revolver matched the one used, the footprints matched Carla's shoes, and the phone data placed her in the area when it happened. The trial began in October 2009. Pittman testified for the prosecution. He told the court how he found Avis and talked about his relationship with Carla. Prosecutors shared all the physical evidence with the jury, the revolver, the bloody footprints, and the phone records. Carla did not testify during the trial. On October 13, 2009, the jury reached a decision. Carla Hughes was found guilty of 2 counts of capital homicide, one for what happened to Avis and one for the unborn child. This type of conviction could have led to a much harsher sentence, but instead the judge gave Carla 2 life sentences. These sentences were set to run one after the other, with no chance of parole. In 2010, Carla asked for a new trial, but the judge denied the request on August 30th. She appealed again, but in June 2012, the Mississippi Supreme Court upheld the original decision. Carla Hughes is still serving her sentence at the Central Mississippi Correctional Facility near Pearl. The next man believed the system had ruined his life, so he made the system pay. Andrew Philip Kehoe was born in 1872 in Tecumseh, Michigan. He was one of 13 children of Philip and Mary Kehoe. He attended Tecumseh High School. He then studied electrical engineering at Michigan State College, which is now Michigan State University. After college, he worked as an electrician in St. Louis, Missouri. In 1911, Kehoe fell and hit his head hard. He lay in a coma for 2 weeks. When he woke up, he went back to Michigan. He moved in with his father, who had remarried. Later that year, an accident happened at the family home. Frances Wilder, Kehoe's stepmother, tried to light the oil stove. Flames caught her clothing. Kehoe threw water on her. The water spread the flames instead of putting them out. She suffered severe burns and passed away the next day because of her injuries. In 1912, Kehoe married Ellen Nellie Price. Nellie came from a well-off family in Lansing. In 1919, they bought a 185-acre farm in Bath Township. At first, things went well. Then money troubles began. They fell behind on their mortgage payments. Foreclosure loomed. Kehoe joined the Bath Consolidated School Board in 1924 as treasurer. He spoke out against building a new school. He said it would raise everyone's property taxes. He ran for Bath Township clerk in 1926 and lost. Meanwhile, Nellie was ill with tuberculosis. The mounting bills, his wife's health problems, and his political defeat weighed on him. On May 18, 1927, Kehoe put his plan into action. Months earlier, he had hidden over 500 pounds of dynamite and pyritol under the floors of Bath Consolidated School. At about 9:45 a.m., an alarm clock triggered the explosives. The blast caused 38 children and 6 school staff to lose their lives. Many others were injured. Before the school explosion, Kehoe had caused his wife's passing and set fire to his own farm buildings. The blaze destroyed the structures and led to many of his animals dying. After the first blast, Kehoe drove a truck toward the school. He had packed it with more explosives and metal scraps. He triggered that load too, right by the school. He passed in that second blast, along with several bystanders. In all, 45 people lost their lives, and 58 were hurt. It remains the most fatal school tragedy in U.S. history. Investigators later found a sign on Kehoe's farm that read, "Society makes wrongdoers." He seemed to believe that social pressures push people to harmful acts. Because he passed at the scene, there was no legal proceeding against him. In the wake of the disaster, schools and communities began to pay closer attention to building safety and the dangers of explosive materials. Now what happens when a delusion becomes fatal and no one steps in to stop it? Priscilla Joyce Ford was born in 1929 in Berrien Springs, Michigan. She grew up in a simple home. She later became a teacher in New York. Ford's personal life was troubled. She married twice and had 3 children. In 1957, she shot her second husband, saying she acted to protect herself from his mistreatment. She then tried to take her own life. After this incident, her daughter, Winter Scott, age 11, went to live with relatives in Los Angeles. Ford was arrested for trespassing and causing harm. Over time, Ford's mental health got worse. Doctors diagnosed her with paranoid schizophrenia. She began to have aggressive thoughts and strong religious visions. She was treated in 7 different hospitals. Each time she left, her condition stayed unstable. By 1980, she had moved to Reno, Nevada. There, her symptoms grew more severe. On November 27, 1980, during the Thanksgiving parade in downtown Reno, Ford drove her 1974 Lincoln Continental onto the sidewalk. She sped up to about 40 miles per hour. She drove through a crowd for about 100 feet. 6 people lost their lives. 23 others were hurt. Police arrested Ford at the scene. She later said she felt pleased when she heard how many people were hurt. After her arrest, Ford was checked by mental health experts. At first, they found her unable to take part in a trial. She was sent to Lakes Crossing Center for care. By August 1981, doctors said she could stand trial. In court, she insisted on speaking. She claimed she was the return of Jesus Christ and could not do wrong. Her lawyers pointed to her serious illness and asked that she serve time in a secure hospital. Prosecutors said she understood right from wrong during the incident. The trial lasted nearly 5 months. The jury found her guilty on 6 counts of taking lives and 23 counts of causing harm. They agreed she should receive the most severe sentence. Ford was sent to a prison for people judged fully responsible but still receiving some treatment. Ford spent more than 20 years under that sentence. She asked courts many times to review her case. In 1989, the state's highest court kept her sentence in place. Ford's health declined over the years. She had emphysema from long-term smoking. She passed away on January 29, 2005, at age 75, from complications related to her lung condition. The next teacher's obsession wasn't with students, it was with their eyes. Charles Albright was born in 1933 in Amarillo, Texas. Just a few weeks after his birth, he was adopted by Fred and Delle Albright. His adoptive mother, Delle, worked as a school teacher. She was very protective and extremely strict. She made Charles skip 2 grades in school, but she also used harsh discipline. One time, she tied him to his bed just for chewing tape. She also dressed him in girls' clothing to keep him clean, as she described it. When Charles was 11, he was given a gun. He began using it on small animals. Della then signed him up for a taxidermy course that was done by mail. That's when he became very interested in removing eyes from animals. Charles was gifted in school. He finished high school at just 15 years old and enrolled at North Texas State College. But by the age of 16, he got into trouble with the law. He was caught stealing and carrying 2 handguns and a rifle. He was sent to a juvenile detention center for 1 year. After he was released, he enrolled at Arkansas State Teachers College. He studied pre-med but was expelled after being caught stealing again. Instead of completing his degrees, Charles forged fake diplomas and transcripts. He claimed to have earned both bachelor's and master's degrees. He married his college girlfriend, and they had a daughter. They separated in 1965 and officially divorced in 1974. Over time, his record kept growing. He was caught stealing from a hardware store and was sentenced to 2 years. He served 6 months of that sentence. In 1981, he admitted guilt in court to inappropriate behavior with his friend's 14-year-old daughter. He claimed he was innocent, but said he accepted the plea to avoid further legal problems. In 1984, he applied to become a Boy Scout leader, but his application was denied. A year later, in 1985, he met a woman named Dixie. She moved in with him and paid most of his bills. Charles worked as a newspaper delivery man during this time. But that job also helped him hide visits he made to women who were involved in street-based work. Between late 1988 and early 1991, 4 women who were working in the Oak Cliff area of Dallas were found deceased. The first woman, Rhonda Bowie, was 30 years old. She lost her life in October 1988. She had been harmed with a sharp object more than 20 times. Next was Mary Lou Pratt, age 33. She was found in December 1990. She had been harmed, then shot in the back of the head. Her eyes had been removed with surgical precision. The third was Susan Beth Peterson, age 27. In February 1991, her body was found. She had been shot 3 times, once in the head and twice in the chest. Her eyes were also removed. The fourth woman was Shirley Williams, age 45. In March 1991, she was found near an elementary school. She had been shot in the face and head. Her eyes were removed in the same careful way as the others. Whoever was doing this clearly had medical knowledge. There were no cutting marks left behind, which pointed to someone skilled in precise removal. Why did this person target these specific women? And why take the eyes? Many believe it connected back to Charles's childhood interest in taxidermy and his early studies in medicine. It seemed like a personal fixation, possibly collecting eyes as some type of keepsake. Investigators later found strong evidence that linked Charles to these acts. In his home, they discovered books like Gray's Anatomy, several X-Acto weapons, and many photos focused on women's eyes. This strongly suggested he was interested in keeping or studying eyes in detail. By March 1991, after Susan's case, it became clear that the same person was involved in multiple incidents. Law enforcement began talking to other women in the Oak Cliff area. One woman, Brenda Smith, said she had been threatened by a man. He yelled, "I hate people like you. I'm going to get rid of all of you." She managed to escape by using mace. Another woman, Veronica Rodriguez, said she was almost harmed by the same man. She ran to a house owned by Axton Schindler. Later, police found out that Axton was renting from Fred Albright, Charles's adoptive father. That raised some serious concerns. Still, police didn't have enough to arrest him yet. Then a tip came in. A friend of Mary Lou Pratt told officers that Charles had a strange interest in eyes. He also often used X-Acto blades. This led police to search his house on March 22, 1991. There, they found the anatomy books, the sharp blades, photos of eyes, and hair fibers that matched those found near the women. Charles was arrested that same day. His trial began on December 13, 1991. The case mostly relied on indirect evidence, like hair and fibers, the items in his house, and statements from survivors. One hair expert said that a hair found at Shirley Williams' scene matched Charles, but later testing showed that the hair actually came from a dog. The defense argued that Axton Schindler, the man who had taken in Veronica, could have been the one involved. They also pointed out that there was no direct evidence, no weapon or DNA linking Charles to the scene. Charles chose not to speak during the trial. On December 18, 1991, the jury found him guilty in Shirley Williams' case. He was not charged in the other 3 cases due to lack of solid proof. He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. He was sent to the psychiatric unit at the West Texas Regional Medical Facility in Lubbock. While there, he did woodworking, helped with softball games, and started writing a book about the wives of Civil War generals. He decorated his prison cell with drawings of eyeballs, showing he still had the same obsession. On August 22, 2020, Charles passed away of natural causes. He was 87 years old. He never admitted to doing anything wrong other than what he was found guilty for in the Shirley Williams case. The eyes of the victims were never found. The next man wore a badge, but his fantasies had nothing to do with justice. Gerard John Schaefer Jr. was born in 1946 in Neenah, Wisconsin. He was the oldest of 3 children. His father, Gerard Sr., worked as a traveling salesman. His mother, Doris Marie, stayed at home to care for the children. The family moved often. They lived in cities like Nashville, Tennessee, and Atlanta, Georgia. In 1960, they finally settled in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Schaefer later said his childhood was difficult. His father drank heavily and often yelled at his wife and kids. While the daughter was favored, Schaefer and his brother were often ignored. He grew close to his mother. He described her as very protective. As a child, Schaefer enjoyed being outdoors. He liked hunting, fishing, and collecting guns. Sometimes he shared these activities with his father. At school, he was quiet and preferred to be alone. He said he wanted to become a forest ranger. By age 14, his behavior had changed. He began stealing women's underwear. He tied himself to trees and had disturbing fantasies. He also harmed small animals while out hunting. Some of his actions showed signs of unusual behavior. He later said that by age 19 he had started taking lives, but in interviews he denied this and said he made those confessions only in prison. Schaefer attended St. Thomas Aquinas High School. Teachers thought he was intelligent. He played on the football and golf teams. After school, he worked as a fishing guide. In 1968, he enrolled at Florida Atlantic University to get a teaching license. He briefly worked as a student teacher at Plantation High School, but he was dismissed for pushing his personal beliefs on students. He tried again at Stranahan High School, but that also ended due to his poor attitude and performance. Around that time, Schaefer became a deputy sheriff in Martin County, Florida. He was known for pulling over young women and sometimes asking them out. Supervisors said he made poor decisions and took unnecessary risks. He was on the brink of being dismissed, but stayed after playing a key role in a major investigation. On July 21, 1972, while on duty, Schaefer picked up 2 teenage girls who were hitchhiking. They were 18-year-old Nancy Ellen Trotter and 17-year-old Paula Sue Wells. He said he wanted to teach them a lesson about the dangers of hitchhiking. Instead, he took them to a remote wooded area near Hutchinson Island. There, he tied and gagged them. He attached one of the girls to a tree with a rope linked to his car. He told them he planned to harm them severely. The girls managed to escape. Though hurt and still gagged, they ran for help. Nancy flagged down passing officers. Both girls gave a clear description of Schaefer and what happened. Schaefer claimed he had overreacted and was just trying to scare them, but police didn't believe him. He was fired from his job and arrested. He faced charges for keeping someone confined and hurting them. Many wonder why he let the girls go. The likely reason is that they had already seen his face and could describe him. He may have realized that harming them would bring immediate consequences. His goal at the time may have been control and fear, not necessarily taking their lives. In December 1972, Schaefer pleaded guilty to the charges. He got a 1-year jail sentence with a chance for parole after 6 months. He also got 3 years of probation. He began serving time on January 15, 1973. He tried to downplay the situation. He said, "I made a stupid mistake. There was no intimacy. No one got hurt." Privately, though, he admitted to more. He said he had tricked and taken the lives of several people before. 2 of them were 17-year-old Susan Place and 16-year-old Georgia Jessup. He had used a fake name, Jerry Shepard, to gain their trust. On September 27, 1972, he picked them up in a blue-green Datsun and told them he was taking them to the beach. They never came back. Susan's mother had written down the license plate. It matched Schaefer's car, even though he was already behind bars at that point. 4 days later, bones were found on Hutchinson Island. They were confirmed to belong to Susan and Georgia. Police searched Schaefer's mother's house. In the attic, they found a trunk. Inside were pieces of jewelry, clothing, passports, and even teeth. Items linked to at least 6 missing women. Some belonged to known victims. They also found over 300 pages of disturbing stories. These stories describe people being taken, tied up, and harmed. Many included real names. He also drew pictures that matched real missing person cases. There were more disturbing discoveries. Investigators found a wash pillowcase that was still stained. They also found sharp weapons, guns, and photos of bound women. His writings played a big role in the case. Investigators noticed the stories matched real unsolved cases. The places, descriptions, and actions were too close to be fiction. Schaefer was arrested again on April 7, 1973. On May 18th, he was officially charged with 2 counts of taking lives, Susan and Georgia. A mental health evaluation showed he had paranoia, psychotic thoughts, and serious behavioral issues, but doctors said he was still mentally fit for trial. His trial took place from September 17th to 27, 1973. The prosecution showed the bones, the writings, and other physical evidence. Nancy Trotter and Paula Wells also testified. The defense claimed the graves had been dug after Schaefer was already in jail. They tried to discredit the witnesses, but it didn't work. On September 27th, after just over 5 hours of discussion, the jury found him guilty on both counts. On October 4th, Schaefer stood in court to be sentenced. The prosecution asked for life imprisonment. His lawyers wanted him placed in a psychiatric hospital. The judge gave him 2 life sentences. Schaefer insisted he was innocent and asked again to be placed in a hospital. When reporters asked for his reaction, he said, "That's the roll of the dice. I had a good defense. I'm innocent." While in prison, Schaefer filed 19 appeals. All were denied. He would not be eligible for parole until at least 2016. At Avon Park Prison, he got married to a woman from the Philippines through letters. She later left him. He kept busy by writing and selling stories under fake names. He pretended to be a woman in his letters to scam people. He also acted as a legal helper for other inmates, though he often used their information against them. In 1985, he was accused of planning a breakout and another aggressive act. He was moved to a high-security unit. He continued writing stories that described disturbing actions. Investigators believe many of them were based on real things he had done. On December 3, 1995, Schaefer was found lifeless in his prison cell. He had been struck many times, on the face, neck, head, and body. One of his eyes was badly damaged, and several ribs were broken. Another inmate, Vincent Faustino Rivera, was later found responsible. Some say it happened after a fight over hot water. Others believe it was because Schaefer had shared information about others. Gerard John Schaefer Jr. lived a double life. He was a student teacher and a deputy, but secretly he was responsible for taking people, harming them, and ending their lives. Everything started to fall apart when 2 teenage girls escaped in 1972. The bones found on Hutchinson Island, along with the items found in his mother's attic, proved what he had done. His own writings matched real cases. He was sent to prison for life and never got out. Even behind bars, he continued manipulative behavior until his life ended in 1995. But not all teachers hand out homework. Some send letters and bodies. In the mid-1960s, Arthur Lee Allen seemed like an ordinary man. He was tall and heavy, with a calm voice. He taught elementary school in Northern California. Allen liked puzzles, codes, and quotes from dark songs like Tom Dooley. Later, similar words showed up in letters from the Zodiac Killer. Some students remembered him bringing lifeless animals to class. He used those animals as part of puzzles. He also called the girls in class "My Beautiful." Even though many liked him, some darker rumors were going around. Allen was born in Honolulu but grew up in Vallejo, California. He finished high school in 1950. After that, he joined the Navy. While in the Navy, he had some trouble. He was put on trial for smuggling a pistol onto a base, but he was found not guilty. Later, he received the China Service Medal. After leaving the Navy, he studied to become a teacher. He worked in different towns, including Atascadero and Valley Springs. In spring 1963, Allen became close to a woman named Phyllis Seawater. He treated her children, Connie, David, and Don, like family. He took them on trips. They went clam digging at Tajaguas Point and visited a racetrack. One day, Connie remembered Allen coming back to the car, huffing and puffing, hands stained red. The Seawaters soon learned the bodies of a young couple had been found nearby that same day. The siblings think Allen might have been there. A few years later, the Seawater teens were in Riverside. Connie woke up feeling dizzy after drinking juice. Later that day, Cherry Joe Bates's lifeless body was found near Riverside City College. Connie's fear grew because of this strange timing. These strange connections made people suspicious for many years. Why was Allen a suspect? In 1969, Allen's friend Donald Cheney told police that Allen had joked about shooting at children on a school bus. This sounded similar to lines from Zodiac letters. Police found a Zodiac brand watch in Allen's house. They also found a Royal typewriter like the one used to write Zodiac letters. Allen's shoe size and footprints matched those linked to the Zodiac. The setup matched the description found in his writings: a gun with a mounted flashlight. In July 1969, a man who survived, Michael Mago, identified Allen from a photo lineup in 1992. He said, "That's him. It's the man who shot me." But police did not find Allen's fingerprints at the scenes. Handwriting experts also said Allen's handwriting didn't match the Zodiac's letters. Allen was never charged for any Zodiac crimes. But in 1974, police arrested him on charges related to inappropriate behavior with children. He pleaded guilty. He spent 3 years in a hospital and 5 years on probation. The Zodiac-related incidents stopped while Allen was in custody. Some people thought this was more than a coincidence. Even though police searched Allen's home in 1971 and 1972 and found sharp weapons, bomb plans, pipe explosives, and animal remains, they never found clear proof linking him to the Zodiac incidents. No DNA from the Zodiac letters matched Allen's. In 2019, a Vallejo detective said, "Without DNA, you have nothing." Official sources confirmed in 2002 that the partial DNA from the letters didn't match Allen. Allen's only conviction was for the inappropriate behavior. There was never a trial for the Zodiac cases. Allen never said he was the Zodiac. In 1991, he told a newspaper, "I've never hurt anyone." He added, "No way could I go out and harm innocent teenagers." He also claimed to have documents from the Department of Justice clearing him, but police took those documents during a search. About the Zodiac rumors, Allen said, "This thing has been haunting me for 22 years. If I was thinking about suicide, I would have done it already." Once, when asked by his former student Connie if he was the Zodiac, Allen said, "If I told you, I'd have to..." A half-joke, half-threat that was hard to understand. Allen passed away at 58 from heart disease in his home in Vallejo on August 26, 1992. He left no final confession or proof he was innocent. His last public words were denials and unclear threats. What motive might Allen have had? The Zodiac letters talked about controlling people as slaves for the afterlife. Young couples and people alone became the targets, each struck by explosives and eerie, coded messages. Allen liked ciphers and showed flashes of anger. He took advantage of his position of power and taught cryptograms. This might show someone acting out ideas of control. But is this a strong reason or just a guess? Without proof, the motive is only a guess. The Zodiac's true identity remains unknown. Allen is the only man police publicly named as a suspect. His conviction for inappropriate behavior, his strange connections to the Zodiac timeline, and his eerie quotes keep suspicion alive even after many years. More than 50 years later, the Zodiac letters and codes remain unsolved. Some letters were never sent. Many questions remain. Was Allen the Zodiac? Or was he a troubled man whose dark side only seemed to match the cases but didn't actually commit them?